Some stories, they're not just stories you read. They feel like something you inherit. They're these huge, beautiful, flawed epics that get at something really deep about human endurance. And that's what we're diving into today. We're not just going to review a book. Nope. We're exploring a cultural monument, Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. Think of this as our love letter to a very, very complicated masterpiece. So, those words, that's the absolute soul of this entire novel. Just picture it. Scarlett O'Hara, she's lost everything, and she's on her knees, clutching a handful of that red Georgia clay. And you have to understand, it's not just dirt to her. That's terra. It's her whole identity. It's her anchor. It's the one thing she will fight and lie and claw to protect. It's this primal, gut-level connection to her home that fuels her will to survive. All right, let's set the scene. Before the war breaks out, Margaret Mitchell paints this picture of a world that, honestly, it feels like a myth. You've got these sprawling plantations, these chivalrous gentlemen, elegant ladies. It's this perfect, romanticized vision of the Old South, a world just steeped in tradition and beauty. But, and this is key, it's all built on a deeply, deeply flawed foundation that's about to be completely shattered. Okay, some quick facts. This book came out in 1936. I mean, think about that, right in the middle of the Great Depression. And this epic historical romance just became an overnight phenomenon. It's not hard to see why, right? It totally spoke to a nation that was longing for some kind of past, even an idealized one. It gave them this huge story of loss and, more importantly, rebuilding, right when people needed to hear that message the most. But then, the Civil War erupts, and that perfect little world, it just collapses. The war here isn't just some background noise. It is a crucible. It's this fire that strips away every single comfort, every certainty. It forces every single character to face this one brutal question. What are you really willing to do just to see the sun come up tomorrow? And this quote, it just gets right to the heart of the book's main argument, which is that survival is not pretty, it's not glamorous. It demands that you throw out all your old illusions and just embrace this cold, hard pragmatism. For someone like Scarlett, all those virtues of being a Southern belle, they become luxuries she just cannot afford anymore. And that's the theme that hits so hard, It really makes you think. When all the rules of society just disappear, what's left to guide you? For Scarlett, her only true north is keeping her family fed and making sure Tara is still standing. Morality? Well, that becomes a question of what works, not what's right. So let's talk about the woman at the center of this entire storm, Scarlett O'Hara. Wow. She's not just a character, she is an absolute force of nature. Look, she's vain, she's selfish, she's manipulative, but she is also, without a doubt, one of the most resilient and flat-out unforgettable heroines in the history of literature. And what's so fascinating about her is that the war didn't create her spirit. No way. It just unleashed it. She was always rebellious, always headstrong. Society just forced her to hide it all behind a pretty smile. The chaos of the war, in a way, gave her this terrible kind of freedom to finally be who she was all along. I mean, the transformation is just profound. You look at who she was supposed to be, this perfect Southern belle whose whole goal was to use her charm to get a good husband. And then you see who she becomes, a survivor, using ruthless business tactics to save her home. She basically trades in her charm for cold, hard pragmatism, and in the process becomes this surprisingly modern woman. But, of course, that kind of survival has a price, and this quote really shows the deep, deep isolation she feels because of it. Think about it. While everyone else is clinging to the memory of who they were, Scarlett is laser-focused on what she has to become, and that just sets her apart. It makes her a total outsider among her own people. She says she can't feel like a lady anymore, and it's because she's too busy being a warrior. So after all that, what's the big lesson here? What do we take away from this absolutely epic journey? Well, if you look past all the romance and the history, the book offers this really powerful, timeless lesson about the sheer strength of the human spirit. And that lesson, in a word, is resilience. The book basically defines it. See, it's not about never failing. It's about what you do after you failed. It's about having the ability to stare total ruin right in the face, to feel every ounce of heartbreak, and somehow still find the strength to believe in tomorrow. And that famous closing thought is the ultimate expression of that resilience. She has just lost Rhett, the man she finally realizes she loves. It is absolute, total personal defeat. But is her spirit broken?
Not a chance. She literally raises her chin and decides she can get him back. The fight is not over. It's just an incredible testament to that will to just begin again. Okay, so we've talked about the masterpiece. Now we have to talk about the complicated part. Because let's be honest, loving this book today means we have to confront its deep, undeniable, and really troubling flaws. And that is not an easy thing to do.
And it all boils down to this one central question, doesn't it? Is this book a timeless masterpiece of storytelling, or is it a problematic relic of its time? The truth, as it usually is that it's kind of both. All right, let's break it down. On the one hand, you've got these incredibly complex characters, masterful storytelling, and these really powerful universal themes of survival. But on the other hand, you have a seriously romanticized vision of a slave-owning society. You have the perpetuation of incredibly harmful racial stereotypes and a really distorted view of the Reconstruction era. You can praise the literary craft while also condemning the historical content. So, where do we land? What's our final recommendation? Honestly, read it. You should read it for its incredible story of resilience and because of its massive place in literary history. But, and this is a big but, you have to go into it with your eyes wide open. Understand the context it was written in, acknowledge its huge flaws, and maybe even read some actual history alongside it to get the real, unvarnished picture. Okay, all of that brings us to our final grade for Gone with the Wind. We are giving it a 7.3 out of 10. So let's break that down. For content quality, we landed on a 7.5. Look, the power of the character development, the really deep themes of survival, those are undeniable literary achievements. But that score gets pulled down, and pulled down hard, by the deeply problematic and romanticized history. You just can't ignore it. Now, if you got swept up in the huge scale of this story, the history, the drama, all of it, and you're looking for more, don't worry. There are definitely other epics out there waiting for you. If you want another huge, multi-generational family saga with a sweeping backdrop, you should absolutely check out The Thornbirds by Colleen McCullough. And if you're looking for another iconic American epic, this one about endurance, friendship, and the end of an era, you have got to read Larry McMurtry's masterpiece, Lonesome Dove. Seriously, don't miss that one. In the end, I think Gone with the Wind endures because, just like Scarlett herself, it simply refuses to be forgotten. It's a story about ruin, yeah, but it's also about rebirth. And it's one of the most powerful reminders in literature that after all is said and done, tomorrow is another day. For more deep dives into the stories that have shaped our world, make sure you follow and subscribe. We'll see you next time.